All right. Okay. Let's see. We'll wait for a few more people to join, maybe. We'll see. A couple of minutes at least. Well, I didn't get a huge number of responses when it came to the questions, but I got a good couple of them. Especially yours I liked a lot. So, first one you had, does the efficiency of a modulating furnace vary with each operating stage? Not really, no. It's still going to maintain that same AFU rating, whether it's on low speed or high speed. It's still going to be 80, 90+% efficient. Basically, the design of the heat exchanger is one of the biggest factors for that system maintaining its energy efficiency. So by just adjusting the gas pressure and the fan speeds, but still using the same heat exchanger, they're able to get the same heat production, but at a lower speed and a lower, same heat efficiency, but like lower production. It's not going to produce as much because it's going at a lower speed, but it's still going to be just as efficient. So That's the extra nice thing about them. But, let's see. What else? As far as I know about the iComfort, I didn't see anything that seemed like it could be used as just its own handheld device. But I do know that Linux has it where there's an app for your phone that you can
Okay.
download. So, like, I know Carrier and Train, Linux, I think, I know Honeywell does as well. They were one of the first ones that did it um,
Yeah.
to make an app on your phone kind of thing, which is super nice. Um,
Yeah, I showed my wife the video. Now she wants one.
all that cool stuff, man.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
when you get to those fancy controls and things, man, it's a ton of fun to work with that kind of stuff. Um,
absolutely,
yeah, it can be an
absolutely.
extra headache too, though.
Sure.
Yeah, but
Somebody got to program it.
yeah, it's once you get used to certain ones, and especially most companies, they'll focus on like a single brand. So like the company I worked for, we focused on mostly Carrier. We had some Linux. I ran into those iComforts once in a while, so I got kind of okay with them. But the Carrier Infinity thermostat, I knew that thing. I knew like 4 different models inside and out after a while. Just
Right.
because I was like, oh, I've run into this problem before. I've seen this happen. Stuff like that.
So is it more that each manufacturer is making a thermostat or a smart thermostat? Sorry, not I forgot the name. Let me
Oh yeah,
variable.
like a
I'm
variable
sorry.
speed system and everything.
Yeah. So are they just making their own thermostats that go with their own system, or is there like a master? Is there a company that makes thermostats that can be retrofitted towards the system that you have?
So typically for the really nice new systems, it's going to be the manufacturer will design their own thermostat. Typically, it's going to be they'll do the apps side of it and everything like that, but the actual guts of it are still going to be made by companies like Honeywell and Emerson and different control brands, Siemens and stuff
Okay.
like that. But they'll like for the longest time ever, and this was one of the first ones I ever saw had it. It looks exactly the same. There's this big white block, and then in this middle, it's like a green screen, very common thermostat in a lot of houses. Um, but for a long time, Train had it where it's a Honeywell thermostat, is what that is. But Train had it where they paid extra money to make it so there's a Train thermostat. And all they did was they changed the name on the bottom from Honeywell to Train.
Sure.
That's it.
Sure. Sure.
So that's where it first started. Was they would take Honeywell, who is the coup de grace best stuff as far as controls for residential. As far as I'm concerned, Honeywell's kills it. But uh, their whole thing was, they're going to make really good devices, the really good controls, and then they'll just, hey, we'll slap your name on it, but we're still making a killing every time.
Mhm.
So manufacturers are like, well, hey, we don't like that. We'd like to get in on the action, and now it's getting more. They're starting to do more and more as far as design them a little bit more, um, especially there's this whole thing where it's now this link that's happening where it's your thermostat, your indoor unit, your outdoor unit, all three constantly feeding information back to each other. And I mean, it's doing it through a microprocessor, and there's a data cable that carries binary code and zeros and ones. And it gets weird because of that, but the big thing to understand is honestly you'll see it where it's a pretty easy check for most of the systems. It'll walk you through it as far as a communication verification, making sure that you can see it'll say communication between indoor unit and thermostat, good. Communication between what it detects, it'll say, oh, I've detected an indoor unit and a zone control system, but I don't detect an outdoor unit. You're going to start looking to see, okay, why not? And typically it's just a damaged wire. That's all it is.
Mhm.
Um, Especially since, I mean, you could get away with it forever. For the longest time, you could get away with if you were changing out a unit, you didn't have to change out the thermostat wire because it's the same
Right.
wires. But with these new ones, because they're so finicky, you have to rerun thermostat wire every time you do them, or you should at least, because what happens otherwise is the service technician goes out there, within the first year, he's out there 4 times trying to figure out what the heck's going on, and then it's like, oh, I got to rerun thermostat wires because they just used the old ones when they put this unit in.
Right.
Which is,
do you see it?
Yeah.
Do you see it moving more and more towards the same type of, I guess, automation that they have in commercial applications to private kind of?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I definitely see that occurring more and more. They're using commercial solutions for residential problems, because it's there's just things that commercially it was expensive and hard to get, but now at modern systems, it's after some time it's a little cheaper to have certain controls and aspects. One of the big ones is people have it where the new smart thermostats will actually have an energy tracker with it, and it'll tell them, hey, here's what the temperature was this day, and here's what the energy consumed, and you can watch the pattern over a month or so. And that way, they can be aware and alert if all of a sudden something starts dipping off, really quickly, and they start seeing their efficiency go way down or their power consumption go way up. They're going to be, okay, wait, what's going on with the system? And that's something that's really nice about it. But yeah, it's you're getting to where it's not, it's not to the point where we're going to have, chillers at people's houses yet or anything like that. But scaling down all this kind of stuff is what's been one of the tough things too, because on a commercial system, having all these extra controls and all these extra components and parts and wires, it's not a big deal, because it's a lot of equipment. It's going to be spaced out. It's pretty large, so it's still easy to access. But when you have all these extra switches and controls and parts, and you cram them into a little residential unit, it makes it tough. So yeah, it's. I always think about, there's you can have rooftop package units for residences. They're much, much smaller, about like, I think they start at, which was one of your questions, I think, too. Yeah. They start at about 1.5 tons is what they get down to. Because the place I'm living at now is that's what I've got currently. I've got a packaged heat pump on the roof. And it's a small little thing, but it does the job. The tough thing with the package units on the roof is replacement more than anything, because for most residences, okay, if I've got to get a unit out and I've got to get a new unit in, well, how do I get the old unit out? Well, there's the outdoor unit sitting right there next to the house. I can get that out of the yard, no problem. The indoor unit's going to be crawl space, attic, first floor, maybe the second floor. I've seen that once or twice. But the package unit's all up on the roof. It's not going to fit down through the access for the roof panel or anything, so you're calling the cranes. Crane always means, then whenever you call a crane, that just means buku bucks. It's always money, but I mean, it's just what you got to do for those systems. But I've had it before. I've gone. I felt bad for these people. They had they were restoring an old house in Arlington or Alexandria, right there, on the DC border.
Yeah.
It was, old house with the seashell foundation still and everything.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, the boards that they had, because the whole flooring on the first floor, they basically ripped up. They were massive, thick planks of wood that were, going through the whole thing. And they had to redo them and everything. And they wanted me to come out there and be the guy with the good news, being like, oh, hey, your HVAC's great. Yeah, and I'm looking around for an outdoor unit and an indoor unit. I can't find it anywhere. I'm like, what the heck? I know there's vents everywhere. And eventually my brain clicked, and I was like, oh, duh, maybe it's on the roof. And so I got my ladder out, and I go up on the roof, and I get up there, and the whole thing's from like 1985, and none of it was running. I was like, oh, this thing's seen much, much better days. It was I felt real bad though, because I went and checked it out. I tested everything out that I could. I was like, all right, well, it's getting power, but it's just not doing anything with it. So we'll see
Right.
where this goes. And, I had to tell them, I was like, hey, well, at this point, we're, it's kind of a new unit. And we'll let you know, you are going to need a crane to get this new unit up here. And they're like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, it's not going to be just a regular.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
and especially in those neighborhoods, some of those neighborhoods up there, you kind of got to roll with the punches because you can't, especially when you get into like the old town Alexandria
yep.
stuff, you got to leave it the way that the community wants you to have it.
Yep.
So you can't just start, oh, I'm gonna go ahead and put it here. No, you got to do what everybody else is doing, and that's,
you got to get
that's
the
so
right,
much money.
Gutter,
you already pay
right, everything. It's
yeah.
Yeah, because I remember one time I was at a lady's house and she had to get new gutters put on her roof when I was going up on the roof at the same time to check not a package unit, but her condenser was on the roof, and it was in downtown Alexandria. And I remember her talking to me about her gutters because she couldn't just get regular ones. She had to get copper because they had to do that whole patina and turn green. And I'm like,
absolutely.
oh my gosh, but
yeah,
it looks nice up there for a reason. So
I had a good friend who had an aunt that lived in the historic district, and her address was like 16 Duke Street.
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
She was trying to move like out of that place, and the stairs were maybe 2.5 feet wide. I don't even know how she got her stuff in there.
It's a huge step up, like.
Absolutely, and I couldn't even imagine but she had a beautiful, beautiful back courthouse. She had like an old carriage house that they had converted over. It was beautiful, but the hassle that goes along into it, I couldn't even imagine.
Yeah, and that's why I always think there's those people who I think have money when I drive up in those neighborhoods where it's it's all gated off and it's out in the communities and everything. But then you drive to those houses in downtown where it's not a gated community. It's a community. You pay to be
exactly
house this nice. Like
that's old money.
Yeah,
that's old money.
Exactly. That's when you walk in the house and it's like, oh wait, are like 3 of the rooms of this house a library? And it's like, yeah, don't worry about it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the old money.
Yeah, that old money houses. It's always fun going to those. I love those always more than new money's not bad. New money's fine. New money's a good time.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh, I've had some people sometimes they've just been complete goofballs. Like I'm driving a van up and they're still offering me like a beer while I'm working. I'm like, no, I gotta leave like eventually. They're like, oh yeah.
Right.
So yeah, it's interesting, but yeah, when the package unit thing, it's something you'll see, especially with older homes. It's really popular because, so one of the big problems with retrofitting a house, especially places here, Richmond, Williamsburg, up in Northern Virginia, you've got a lot of homes that you want to hold on to that history kind of thing.
Right.
I think it was just a couple of years back, Richmond was like the number one city in the U.S. for Victorian era houses. Which is late 1800s, early 1900s, which is what pretty much all those plaques are right around that era that I see most of the time on the houses. And because of that, you got it where the big difficulty is fitting the air handler in the house. That's that part where there's the evaporator and all those and the furnace or the heat exchanger if it's got a gas furnace. That's the largest part, and you have to have ductwork connect to it at the bottom and at the top, and then branch it out through the walls and everything. If you can't get to that, if you can't have it where that system can be accessed on a regular basis for service or anything like that, you just can't fit it in the walls, but you can fit ductwork in the walls, thin little boxes and all that kind of stuff, and you can get that ductwork in. That's when most people will go for a package unit because only thing you have to have in the house is room for ductwork and room for a thermostat, and that's it. As long as you've got those two, you can just, and you've got room on the roof, stick it on the roof, you're good. So that's another reason why it's used on a lot of those style of houses, and why mini splits have become more and more popular as well.
Sure.
Because it's completely ductless. So you just gotta, but that's getting interesting with different, like you're saying, different codes and city, how they want things done. It's got to be specific. So it's pretty interesting how how a lot of that stuff's coming around. But missed a call. No, it's pain. All right, what's another we have in here? I would say probably that as far as would a modulating or two-stage motor have a shorter lifespan than a single-speed motor? I'd say, yeah, it probably would. It's just the fact that it's having to fluctuate, it's having to go those multiple speeds. And with that, it's going to have more parts, more coils. So it's got more things to fail, basically.
Right.
The energy efficiency of it would be amazing. I imagine, I would hope that the energy efficiency trade-off would be, as far as the lifetime trade-off would be worth it. But I don't know if it would. I'm trying to think, because I've seen some motors that are old motors from like the 60s that are still just pumping along, still
keeping going.
I'm like, good Lord. And that, but that's on your like industrial kind of stuff. That's but they've only gone that one speed that whole time.
Right.
When you're introduced, more and more speeds, you're introducing extra windings, you're introducing for the variable speed motors, you've got it where you're talking about doing that whole rectification where you're taking that AC current, taking it DC current, and then basically running a very small DC motor.
Right.
But yeah, that's when it gets real crazy. Oh. Huh. Hold on. I'm trying to make sure. Darvell's trying to join. I don't want to have to be excluded. Yeah. Gas pressure. Yeah, honestly, I don't know why inlet gas pressures vary so widely for modulating furnaces. My best guess would be ignition types or styles of ignition, just because there's that whole gas to air ratio they have to have for combustion to take place.
Right.
And depending on the heat source, it might change that, I imagine. Like a spark ignition versus a hot surface igniter. I feel like a spark igniter would require a smaller amount of gas, so it might be able to go off of a lower inlet pressure for a Lennox system compared to a Carrier. Because Lennox, I know they use spark ignition, and Carrier uses hot surface igniters. That'd be my best guess, I would say.
Because it seemed like there was a wide range. I think he quoted like 3.5 all the way up to 13 or something. I was like, that's a pretty big.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big swing.
Yeah.
There's a lot that could fall in between that.
I'd say that if anything, he might mean 3.5 or 13, because it would be that makes sense if we're talking about like natural gas versus propane or something like that. Because if it's propane, then that would be That'd be about the highest you'd want that pressure at all.
Right.
Well, I guess, inlet pressure. Duh, I'm thinking outlet pressure.
Yeah.
Inlet pressure, it's just going to vary based on the town and the county and the regulators, basically, because
Okay.
unless it's got an individual regulator for the furnace ahead of it, kind of thing, the gas valve, there we go, sweet. The gas valve acts as your regulator for most systems. Is it working?
Okay. Okay.
Can you hear me at least?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, cool. So we're just going over questions and everything like that from the other night. Talking about some different stuff. Let's see. Modulating furnace blower speeds. How is it synchronized with the gas valve pressure? All right. How does a modulating furnace gas valve and burner and blower motor all communicate to each other? Is all off of that control board, all off that IFC control board with the microprocessor and all that kind of stuff on it. It's going to take in all the information from our various valves and then give it the various outputs to say, okay, turn on at 50%. We got 50% gas. We need 50% of our inducer draft motor speed, 50% on our blower motor speed. Let's cut it all, down to what we're trying to get to. That's typically how those are going to work. All right. Let's see. Well, who sent this to me? No, I just. There's the user. Excuse me. There's something sometimes every now and then they'll call it a UI or user interface. And in videos or in programs or when they're given a preview of equipment or something like that, and all they're talking about for a user interface is the thermostat. That's just a fancy way to say that, because it's us the users, how I interact, the interface, the part that I'm going to actually touch and work on is going to be that that thermostat. Let's. That I cannot read 100%. Yeah. So manometers, that's another thing someone wrote a question about as far as how they're going to work and what style you need. So there's generally two types of manometers that they come in besides digital and manual. You've got it where it's going to be a single or a dual manometer. A single will just take one gas pressure, so it takes a single gas pressure. The dual will take two gas pressures. The single is fine, it works good, but the problem is you're only going to be able to check either inlet pressure or outlet pressure. With the dual, you can check your inlet pressure and your outlet pressure, so the pressure of the gas coming into the gas valve, the pressure of the gas coming out of the gas valve, and you can measure those both at the same time, which makes life a lot easier. And you can use any type of manometer for a commercial or residential unit. It doesn't really matter. The main thing is to make sure that it's in the right units of measurement. Get a manometer that measures inches of water column. Don't have one that measures, just in PSI or something like that, because that would do no good for you. And how often does a gas furnace require cleaning? It's one that depends on a lot of factors as far as how often it needs a cleaning. I would say burners definitely need a cleaning at least every 5 years for a standard system, but the big factor is where is the furnace located. All right. And the reason why this is the biggest factor is because where the furnace is located, unless it's a 90% high efficiency furnace, it's going to use the air in that location for combustion. So if it's the air in the attic, it's probably cold air. It's probably very dry. It's probably going to be, if it's got anything in it, it might have some insulation, some fiberglass, some basic stuff like that, but nothing too crazy. Another spot for a furnace that's very common, like my sister's house where hers is, it's in her laundry room. When it's in a laundry room or a mud room or something like that, well, let's see, haven't gotten those rooms. Well, you've got bleach and you've got detergents and you've got stuff like that. And little tiny amounts of those detergent vapors and gases will go off and will be in the air in that laundry room. That's why the laundromat smells the way it does, is because a little bit of trace gases coming off of those detergents will make an odor that smells pretty lovely. The problem is when those gases go through and they're part of that makeup air for our combustion process, they're going to cause, they can have chlorine present, and they can have it where they can accelerate the corrosion and breakdown of a heat exchanger and a burner. You can have it where if it's in a crawl space, it can be, if it's not got a good vapor barrier, which I've seen before, where it's a crawl space where it's pretty much just dirt underneath, it's got no vapor barrier. You can have it where there's a lot of moisture in the air in that crawl space. It's very muggy, it's very musty. It's, you feel like you're gonna, just start growing mildew on your uniform while you're down there, and those are the ones where it's you'll see it where like you'll have burners that will just completely rust over. They'll have it where, because that air is so moist, and we already have water vapor as a byproduct of combustion. But if we're dealing with moist air to begin with, it's going to have, you're going to have condensation take place in more locations. You're going to have it take place more easily. That's the big thing. And it's going to happen faster. So how long does a heat exchanger and a furnace last? I'd say on average, a furnace lasts probably about 15 years on average. If you have a furnace in a good location that's well maintained, that was installed properly with, good initial gas pressure and ventilation and everything like that, you could probably have where the system runs for 30 years and no one would even notice, a furnace is a very, very solid piece of equipment. It doesn't, it's not super high tech. They can just run and run and run and run without needing replacement all the time. Air conditioners, because they're dealing with so many complicated processes of superheating and subcooling and condensing and evaporating, refrigerant all the time, it just makes it a pain in the butt, and it makes that equipment wear down much faster. It's like I always like to think about it. It's cooling down a building and removing heat from a building. That's kind of new high tech stuff. But heating up a house and lighting a fire, we've been doing that since caveman times. So it's a little more basic. It's not as high end, but with the new modern furnaces, they're getting a little more high end, where they've got to have a little more regular maintenance on them because they've got a few more components, they got a few more safeties, some extra things you got to check out on them just to make sure they're operating. They're operating properly. Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, I like I say, 15 is the average. You could have it where they last 30. They could last 7. I've seen gas furnaces go out in 9 years. And I'll never forget it. It scared the crap out of me when I had this happen. I went to a lady's house, really nice. lady with a Saturday call, like Saturday at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I was feeling fine, and really nice little Hispanic woman, answers the door, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll take care of you gas furnace, no problem. So I started looking at it, and I'm checking it out, and I am realizing, okay, well, pressure switch isn't working right. So, I got to the truck. I'm like, all right, let me see if I've got anything that looks like this one, and hopefully this will be the only thing that needs replacing, and we can fix this, and then we're good. Well, I found the new pressure switch, installed it, got the new one going. All right, let's get this system started up. The heat exchanger was damaged, and I did not know this ahead of time, but I found out very quickly that it was damaged. What had happened was the heat exchanger itself had become separated from the wall where the fan motor and all those extra components that you can access are, all that stuff on the outside of it. So basically, the back side of the heat exchanger was just gone. It was separated. I didn't know, couldn't tell from my vantage point. I'm thinking, oh, it's a bad pressure switch, no problem. So I put a new pressure switch on. I get the furnace started up. Inducer draft motor starts going. Okay, cool. I see the igniter. Sweet, let's get that going. And then as soon as the gas goes in, I just hear boom, like huge. I mean, I got scared so bad because I was sitting like a foot in front of my face. It's just this whole thing just goes boom, and the whole around of it just is like a little quick flame, just and then out. And I was like, okay, goodness, the flame rollout switch was working because that stopped it from doing anything more. But yeah, as soon as that happened, and this was like the furnace was in the worst location. It was in the middle of like it was on the first floor of a ranch style house, and it was like in the middle.
What caused that? What caused that to happen?
Basically the heat exchanger being separated from the front. When the gas came in, there was that little bit of separation,
Right.
And so when the gas got ignited, it literally just basically blew it apart. And then when it blew it apart, the flames went in the wrong direction, and the flame rollout switch immediately shut the system off. So it didn't keep burning, but otherwise it would have just basically rattled apart, which would have been even worse. But
that happens a lot when you keep hitting that reset button on the oil burner.
Yeah, yep. It was
you back and light it, that motherfucker. Woof.
Yeah, it was that same kind of thing, but it was it did not try to bounce back from that one. It was as soon as that happened, I was like, oh, that was its last try. Yeah, it was something else. But and the worst thing was like where the unit was located was on the first floor, like right when you walk in it was like in the middle of like the main hallway on the first floor. So like I have the two little sliding closet doors that I fold out of the way, and then I'm right there at the furnace, and I'm working on it, and people are passing by, and then it's just boom. I was like, oh, and they're and someone's coming. The lady comes in the room. She's like, "Is everything okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, we're fine. Your furnace is."
Gas furnaces too. They don't smoke up a lot.
No. They don't. No, they're not going to smoke. Not like an oil furnace. Not nearly. Yeah. Oil furnaces. Those things burn. They will. Yeah. They're. Oh.
Trust me. Yeah.
Yeah. Oil heat is something else. Oil heat is. It's old school, man, but it works. It
makes you take your clothes off, man.
Oh yeah. You can't.
Oil heat make you take your clothes off. You're like,
yeah. Oh. You're like, I'm not using blankets or anything. Like I'm just dealing with this high temperature. Yeah, because I got a buddy of mine. He lives out in where did he move out to? Shoot, I can't remember. But he moved out somewhere, and he's got it where he has an oil furnace. And I was just like, I got in that house, and I was like, holy crap! Like it was the middle of January, and it felt like July. I was like, oh my god, hot as hell in here. And that's why people are willing to pay you that oil price, because they know that's some good heat.
Damn right.
All right. Well, I got to go real quick. I'm going to go ahead and end this meeting for us. I sent out the other email with the questions and everything like that for those other videos pertaining to what we talked about before. And then I'm going to upload both this video and the other one onto YouTube and send out those links later tonight for y'all. That way we got everything. So, all right.
Sounds great.
Thanks so much. Y'all have a good evening.
Thank you. When we gonna get back? When we gonna do the lab thing? We was talking about started down at 5 so far.
Yeah, so the lab, what I've found out so far is we've got it where now it's no longer 9 people, it's got to be 3 people at a time. And the only times they really have open are Fridays and Saturdays. So I've got to work with everyone and see what we can do as far as scheduling, because they start locking the building down at like 6 o'clock and not letting people in. So it's still a scheduling thing I'm trying to figure out. I'm also trying to, tomorrow I'm going to try and get the online Cengage simulation thing so that at night I'll walk through with y'all and you tell me what to do, and we'll do troubleshooting on a gas furnace virtually at least, if nothing else.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to work something out.
Are there any more of those Cengage things available? Because the first one I got, it said that the code had already been used.
Yeah. I'll check with the director tomorrow. I'm meeting with him tomorrow at noon. So I'll check and see, because I know there's like 2 other like starting classes that need them as well. But if I can at least swing 1 or 2, that's what I'd like to do for sure. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right, gents.
All right, fellas. Have a good weekend, man.
Y'all have a good weekend.
All right, you too, Val.
Get some rest. Stay safe.
All right.